One of the most recognizable and yet alien landscapes that we come across in the Halo universe is that of the deserts of the Ark. Deserts, of course, are not unknown to us, but it's not necessarily the desert itself which is so alien. Of course, the desert is seated on a massive megaconstruct beyond the rim of the galaxy, and the skybox is filled with the entirety of the Milky Way. And of course, there are colossal geometric structures that jut out of the stone. But ignoring all of this, there is still an aspect of these deserts, which, if you stand still long enough, will give you an eerie sense of something alien lurking within the dunes. The distant echo of howls and whines on the air solidify what should just be a desert landscape into something all the more unsettling. And yet these sounds can be explained by the very physics of the desert itself. Hey everyone, welcome back to Installation 00, and today we're talking about a rather niche subject surrounding the deserts upon the Lesser Ark, and attempting to ascertain why the dunes seem to sing to us. And when I say singing sounds, you may think of something esoteric or ethereal, otherworldly perhaps, but in all likelihood you yourself have heard it. These haunting howls and whines that we can hear in the distance are a part of a broader cacophony of ambient sounds that ring out across these deserts. When one pays attention, beneath the roar of the moving sands and the aggressive lashing of the wind, you can hear the calls of perhaps distant large herbivores. And of course we now know, as a consequence of retroactive lore drops, that the Ark itself is filled with life. In spite of the fact that when we're on the Ark in Halo 3, we encounter basically nothing beyond birds. But again, when you move these bird calls or animal calls aside, there is still something there. And this level ambience on Halo 3 isn't the only time that we've heard it. At this point, I believe it's a foregone conclusion that the trailer that we received when Halo was to debut on the Xbox One, with the Chief wearing a poncho, walking across immense sands, that this tallies up with the deserts of the Ark. And in spite of the fact that we never really got to see these particular events play out within the games, perhaps an abandoned storyline, those same eerie howls and whines can be heard. But just what are they? What are these eerie howls? Why is the desert seemingly calling out to us, singing almost? Is there Forerunner machinery at work beneath the sands? Are they simply acoustic effects of Forerunner bafflers that are designed to hide and obscure very important structures from the prying eyes of all? Or is something beneath the sands calling out to us? Now that final remark may make a lot of sense to those who are entrenched in the deep lore of the Halo universe. We know that the Forerunner Contender class AI Mendicant Bias is buried beneath the sands on the Ark, beneath the Epitaph Tower. We know that seemingly this same location exists in an esoteric form within the domain. We even know that there are at least 2 Forerunner maps within the multiplayer that carry with them some deep and dark lore, one of which is itself upon the Ark. So are these howls that we can hear something similar to Mendicant Bias, or a similar ancilla that has been entombed beneath the sands? And while of course this is a possibility, the answer may in fact be found by the forces at play within the sands themselves. The sand on the Ark is a very, very specific form of sand. Most sand is simply a granular material made up of tiny pieces of rocks and minerals that vary quite dramatically in size and shape, but usually average anywhere from between a 1/16 of a millimeter and 2 millimeters. and are generally created by the erosion and weathering of rocks over millions and millions of years, breaking down larger rocks into smaller and smaller pieces. Their irregular shape and size being something of a defining characteristic of generic sand. But the sand on the Ark is most definitely not this. The sands upon the Ark are seemingly almost all roughly the same grain size and made of the same material. An extremely pure crystalline white quartz composed almost entirely of silicon dioxide. And when sand is in this very specific format, all the same grain size, all the same material with no fouling of any other erroneous materials, the sand can develop a resonance that makes it sing at 105 decibels. Singing sand dunes are known to occur here on Earth and can produce a sound described as roaring, booming, squeaking, also known as the Song of Dunes. This is a natural sound phenomena of up to 105 decibels lasting as long as several minutes that occurs in about 35 desert locations around the world. The sound is similar to a loud, low-pitched rumble. It emanates from crescent-shaped dunes, and the sound emission accompanies a slumping or avalanching movement of the sand, usually triggered by wind passing over the dune or by someone walking near the crest. In these earthly instances, very specific conditions have to come together to create the singing sands. The sand grains have to be relatively uniform between 0.1 and 0.5 millimeters in diameter, the sand must contain silica, and the sand needs to be at a very specific humidity. And when these conditions come together, the most common frequency that is emitted from singing sands is around 450 Hz, which is around the lower end of human hearing. In the case of the Ark, this very homogeneous, very pure and very uniform silica-based sand from 20 Hz up to around 200 MHz, meaning that in theory different layers or chunks of the sand could resonate at different positively reinforcing frequencies, tremendously amplifying their volume and creating a chorus of harmonic sound resonance that can travel out across the landscape. The exact mechanics behind singing sand is believed to be produced by a shear force, as each layer of sand grains slide over the layer beneath them. The similarity in size, the uniformity and the cleanliness means that grains move up and down in unison over the layer of grains below them. Even small amounts of fouling or pollution on the sand grain's uniformity can reduce or entirely cancel out the friction enough to silence the sand. Others believe the sound is produced by the friction of grain against grain movements. Others still have suggested that the frequency of vibration is related to the thickness of the dry surface layer of sand. The sound waves bounce back and forth between the surface of the dune and the surface of the moist layer beneath, creating a resonance that increases the sound's volume. The sound may also be generated by friction between the grains or by the compression of air in between the grains. You're listening to the very sound of singing sands at the moment, and yet this sound doesn't very closely match that sound that we hear on the Ark, which ultimately debunks the theory that we're listening to singing sands, meaning it's all the more likely it could be something buried under the sands by the foreigners, or some local but unseen species calling out across the roar of the winds, until you realise the distance that we are from the bulk of the dunes and the differing sizes of the dunes themselves. Where we first hear these singing sands, we are stood on an outcropping quite a large distance from the body of the desert itself, with the crescent-shaped dunes that would be responsible for this noise visible in the distance. And it is that very distance and the winds that are happening between us and the source of the sound that create the howls that we hear. Of course, the exact resonant frequency and the tones that are generated by these singing sands are markedly different from anything we have here on Earth due to the very alien composition, the very uniform composition of the sands of the Ark. But the howls that seem to change in pitch and amplitude do so as a consequence of the sound waves that are being generated coming from more than one source. Dunes of different height under the drive of the wind will cause sand grains to be deposited along the height of the dune at different points. Smaller, lighter grains are carried higher up towards the crest of the dune, while larger, heavier grains remain lower down, which is also adversely affected by how big the dune is itself. If the dune is very large, winds will carry smaller grains and deposit them at the top. Meanwhile, if the dune is much lower, those smaller grains will not settle and be blown clear of the dune altogether, meaning the grains at the apex then tend to be a larger diameter. And since different grain diameters will resonate at different frequencies, different heights of dune will generate different notes. But then how do we explain these sounds seemingly rising and falling in amplitude rather than a constant droning background noise? Well, this can be answered by the fact that the sounds that are being generated are being buffeted by the winds that howl through this desert, causing some of the emanated notes to reach our ears at some points and other notes to reach our ears at others. And while admittedly this is a very niche subject, a video on the sands that are present on a fauna installation, I felt it necessary to give the sands their chance to sing, not just to highlight the possible explanation as to what these noises are, but also to pay homage somewhat to the sound design, the soundscapes effectively that are developed for the Halo games, and the ambience that makes the worlds that have been built for us feel that much more alive. If this video interested you, I do have another channel called Ambient Wonders where I make videos exploring the soundscapes of the Halo universe, and often in very long format, allowing you to study, relax, meditate or sleep to the ambience of the Halo universe. The link is in the description if you want to sample that, and until next time. Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, consider hitting the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss out on future content, and hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. It really does help the channel out significantly. Feel free to pop a comment below on anything you'd like me to cover next, and before signing off I just want to give a shout to my Patreon supporters, Spartan10148, my singular contender class ancilla, Falcon, Jordan and Poseidon, the metarchs of my facility, Sylphia, Ashley, Esoteric, Spartan 1029 and Chris Allen, my dutiful monitors, Darian, Legion, Labrat, Spartan 137, Chris, Element 0, J3, Mr. Keys, Gunslinger Cult, Evermore's Personal Devil, Scion Esports, and Saber, my diligent sub-monitors, my dominating fleet of Strato Sentinels, and my loyal enforcers, and all other patrons who continue to support the channel. I can't thank you guys enough. Big props to my Tier 0 YouTube members, Spartan 137, Talia, Fenrir, Bornstella, and Jimbo, and all other YouTube members keeping the installation running on that glorious vacuum energy. And if you really love what I'm doing here, consider supporting the channel via the links in the description. Much love, take it easy, and find peace in the domain.